breaking down the Vikings from the perspective of a former NFL General Manager of the Year. It's Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, presented by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
Welcome to Jeff Diamond's Thursday Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Viking season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with Ross Brendel, and Ross does a great job, our producer, getting all of our clips together, our audio clips, our interviews. And Ross, a big week ahead for the Vikings, a big Thursday night, Sunday night, another prime time game for the Vikings after the big win in Chicago on Monday night, and short week, got to get ready. And their quarterback is expecting a baby this week.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I feel pretty good about this one, knowing that J.J. McCarthy in primetime nationally broadcasted games is undefeated in the NFL. So what could cause any issues this upcoming Sunday night?
That is true. And he, this game will certainly be pumped up by NBC as the J.J. McCarthy against Michael Penix game, as two top 10 quarterbacks in the 2024 draft. And McCarthy, of course, picked 10th by the Vikings. Penix picked 8th by the Falcons. Last time they met on a football field was in the national championship game in January of 2024. And JJ's team, the Michigan Wolverines, pounded Michael Penix and the Washington Huskies on that day, 34-13. In that game, JJ didn't have to throw a lot, as you recall, and had a couple of good runs, but they kind of pounded him on the ground and with defense, and Penix threw a couple of picks. And so we'll see how that turns out this time. The Vikings hope it's a similar result.
Well, and logic would tell you, if I can put my optimism hat on, Jeff, logic's probably not the right word, but you'd like to think that the Vikings can get this one done, right? Home opener, crowd behind them, feeling good after what happened on Monday night in Chicago. I'd also like to think, you know the stats as well as I do, even in a 17-game season versus a 16-game season, the pressure's really on the Falcons here, because falling to 0-2 makes it a lot more difficult on them. But that doesn't mean the Vikings don't want to get off to a 2-0 start as well. But I just feel like the team that's in the real tough spot on Sunday night is the Atlanta Falcons and not the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, I always felt that it was really important to get a win in the opener, which the Vikings did accomplish, because if you lose that first game, it puts a ton of pressure on a team to avoid going 0-2, makes it that much more difficult. That's the predicament the Kansas City Chiefs are in this week, the Detroit Lions, Chicago Bears, who will meet in Detroit. And so, yeah, I think it's certainly, having gotten that opening win was very important, gives them confidence in their quarterback after the great comeback, the great fourth quarter, after his shaky first three quarters and the pick six, and ends up being selected NFC Player of the Week, Offensive Player of the Week, which I thought was a little bit of a stretch when you throw for 143 yards. But hey, 3 fourth quarter touchdowns and a big primetime win. I guess that gets it done, but maybe not quite the sterling effort that Josh Allen had on Sunday night, although he was the AFC Offensive Player of the Week. But I do think the Vikings are in a good spot, and I think it'll be a fun game from the standpoint of how does Kevin O'Connell approach this game? Is he going to let JJ turn it loose earlier than he did on Monday night, considering that last year Sam Darnold lit up the Falcons in week 14? An amazing game. He threw for 347 and 5 touchdowns in that game, 3 of them to Jordan Addison, who will not be there on Sunday night because of his suspension. 2 more games he's got to serve. Justin Jefferson had 7 catches for 132 in that game with 2 touchdowns. And the Falcons' starting corners are still the same 2 guys, A.J. Terrell and Mike Hughes, the former Viking. So I'm going to be curious to see how O'Connell approaches this. Is he going to try to pound the rock, as was very important in setting up play action against the Bears with Jordan Mason, and then taking shots to Jefferson and Aaron Jones out of the backfield. Is he going to try to establish that running game, or is he going to come out throwing against that Atlanta secondary they had so much success against last year? How are they going to utilize TJ Hawkinson this week when he had very limited targets last game against Chicago? Only 4 targets, 3 catches, 15 yards. And even Jefferson only 7 targets with 4 catches. So we will see how that plays out. And then, of course, there's the chess match with Brian Flores against a young quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. And he's had a lot of success against these young quarterbacks. We know that. So will he blitz earlier than he threw at Caleb Williams on Monday night, where Caleb came out, completed his first 10 balls, takes him down the field for a touchdown, and then the next 9 drives, the Bears only get 1 field goal as Flores turned up the heat. I expect him to maybe turn it up a little sooner on Penix this week. We'll see, especially playing at home with the crowd noise. The defensive lineman can get off to a good jump in the pass rush. So there are a lot of great subplots in this game. Is Christian Darrisaw going to play? Is Harrison Smith going to play? Will Van Ginkel be back from his concussion? Jeff Okudah in concussion protocol also. Unfortunately for the Vikings, they did place Blake Cashman on injured reserve today. Puts pressure on Eric Wilson, but he looked great in the 4th quarter. The 10-year vet, former Viking, former Packer, and he made a lot of plays, including a blocked punt, but a lot of plays on defense too. So certainly a lot of really interesting subplots this week. I'm just not sure, Ross, if the national television audience maybe would have preferred that Philadelphia Kansas City game for Sunday night.
Yeah, it's very interesting on that because I noticed that too. Maybe they were assuming it was going to be, now they shouldn't have assumed this because they know when they put the schedule together. Were
Sure.
they possibly still wanting to play up the Kirk Cousins angle? But everybody knew Kirk Cousins wasn't going to be the starting quarterback for Atlanta. You do get the fun subplot of 2 quarterbacks who were drafted in the same round of the same draft, only literally a handful of picks apart. By the way, J.J. McCarthy starts his year going against Caleb Williams, who starts his career. Caleb Williams went number 1 in last year's draft. Penix went 8. So 2 quarterbacks that went in front of him, he has a chance to beat in his opening start. By the way, on your player of the week thing, don't give the NFL any ideas, Jeff. You know better than I do, better than most. They might just take, you said, well, 1 good quarter versus the full game. You might have just given the NFL an idea for player of the week in the first quarter, player of the week in the second quarter,
Right.
player of the week in the third and fourth
we
quarter.
don't need that.
No, we don't need that. But I will say this: you brought up so many interesting subplots, which again is what makes, in my opinion, this show great. Somebody who once sat in your position as general manager. But of all the things that you brought up, 2 things stood out to me, and I'm drawing conclusions from the game against the Bears into now this game against the Falcons. I thought what ailed the Vikings was a little bit of their own demise was caused by themselves. I just thought the offensive game plan in the first half didn't make a ton of sense. Sitting back and letting Caleb Williams just do whatever he wants to you on offense didn't make a ton of sense. So when you talk about bringing the pressure, I fully expect, especially being at home, that the Minnesota Vikings will bring more pressure and try and make Penix feel as uncomfortable as they made Caleb Williams in the second half. Offensively, not apparent here, but I can liken it to when you let your kid go on the bike for the first time. You follow behind, you kind of hold the seat even though the training wheels are off. That kind of felt like that's what Kevin O'Connell was doing in the first half with J.J. McCarthy until it became apparent he needed to let the bike go and let the kid go on his own. I don't think they're going to treat him with nearly the amount of kid gloves at home in week 2 as maybe they did in the first half of week 1.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that, and especially considering what happened last year in that game when Darnold lit up that Falcons secondary. And so, yeah, I think, but part of that is dependent too, is Darrisaw back? Can Justin School hold up? He was shaky in that first 3 quarters, got better towards the end of the game as the offensive line got better. So that will be interesting to watch too. But let's look at here are a couple of our audio highlights going back to that game last year. And Here was one of those big plays by Darnold to Justin Jefferson, a 52-yard touchdown, gave the Vikings an 8-point lead in the third quarter.
Sam Darnold keeps it alive. Darnold on the run. Open man. Coverage blown. Walking touchdown. Justin Jefferson.
We remember that play. Justin kind of walked backwards into the end zone, nobody near him. And the Vikings, as I said, kind of started to take control at that point. And Kirk Cousins came home back to Minnesota, not necessarily home, he's from Michigan, but came back to Minnesota last year in that Week 14 game. He was nursing that sore arm, but had not really made it public at that point. But you could tell he was having trouble throwing the ball downfield. And he started out great going. That first drive took it right down the field in that game. He ends up throwing for 344 in the game, and with some really good weapons that they've got. And that'll be part of the question this week. Will Darnell Mooney be back? He hasn't played at all in training camp or in the first game with a shoulder. And then Drake London got hurt in the first game with a shoulder. But Raheem Morris, the coach, said he expects London back, perhaps Mooney this week. We'll see. But Kirk has some pretty good yards in that game, but then he kind of went south towards the end of the game and threw a couple of picks. And here was a terrific one-handed grab by Byron Murphy.
1st and 10 from the Minnesota 25. Cousins got rid of it right before he was hit. Byron Murphy with a one-handed pick. Takes the knee in the end zone. Second interception today thrown by Cousins. And for Murphy, a career-high 6.
You can't cut the highlight short till you get the Gallahorn in there, Jeff.
Of course. And you think about some of the keys defensively to this game. Stopping Bijan Robinson, one of the top running backs in the league, Pro Bowl back. He hurt the Vikings last year in that game. Had 92 yards rushing, and Tyler Algier, their number 2 back, had 63 yards. So it was really, for the Vikings, had the number 2 run defense in the NFL last year. They struggled against Atlanta's run offense. However, Caleb McGarry, their really good right tackle, highly paid right tackle, is on injury reserve. That has had a big effect on their running game. They had trouble running against Tampa Bay last week. Both those guys only had 24 yards rushing. Penix had some plays with his legs, but I think that's going to be a key, obviously, that the Vikings want to stop Bijan Robinson, especially as one of the top dual purpose backs in the league. He did have 6 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown last week. And here was that touchdown from Michael Penix.
Fake to Robinson. And now it's Robinson who makes the catch out of the backfield. Picks up a Falcons first down and more. Still going inside the 10. Touchdown!
Now, this will be a big challenge for especially Eric Wilson, replacing Blake Cashman, as I mentioned, unfortunately on IR now for the next 4 weeks with that hamstring. So pressures on Eric Wilson. He played really well when he came in, as we talked about in the fourth quarter. Also had a block punt in the game. And so, but he's going to have to be spying on Bijan coming out of the backfield and also trying to stop the run. But the Vikings, I think, have the manpower up front to stop the run right away with Jonathan Allen, with Javon Hargrave. They both had really excellent games as run stoppers and as pass rushers. Both had 6 pressures on Caleb Williams in the game. Hargrave had 2 sacks. And then, of course, the edge rushers, they had kind of a tough time against Williams, chasing him around. Grenard and Van Ginkel and Dallas Turner, they were close to sacks. Michael Penix is not as much of a runner as Caleb Williams, so I think they'll have a better chance to contain him and get after him and sack him, especially, as I said, with McGarry out on that offensive line. But one of the things interesting, talking about McCarthy and last week's game, kind of our last audio highlight. And we covered a lot of this in the show on Tuesday, but we didn't get to this particular play, which McCarthy pointed to as really a key to his kind of confidence coming out and feeling much better when he completed this 28-yarder to Jalen Naylor right before the half to set up the 59-yard field goal by Will Reichert.
Well, they're going to push it. And why not? Naylor. And there's action. They've got one timeout left.
So I think as we, again, look forward to Sunday night, going to be a raucous atmosphere at US Bank Stadium. I think the crowd will be amped up after the Monday night game. Really looking forward to the national television game, and should be a lot of fun. Before we get to a couple interviews here from the coach and a couple players, let's talk about our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers. GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering to building upon prior knowledge. Year after year, decade after decade, GMC over 100 years dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move the country forward. We are professional grade, well-qualified buyers. Get 0% APR on 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 crew cab models with a 5.3-liter engine with an average finance saving of $4,322 plus $1,500 bonus cash. That's a total value over $5,800 plus no monthly payments until next year. See your Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealer today. Length of contract limited, deferred monthly payments for 120 days. Must finance with GM Financial. Down payment required at signing if applicable. Finance charges accrue from date of financing. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 9/30/25. And let's hear from Kevin O'Connell talking from his media session yesterday about Penix and about the Atlanta defense.
You know, I think Michael Penix is a guy that we studied him a lot, know him very well, and know how talented he is as a thrower of the football. You know, he truly excelled at the collegiate level, pushing the ball downfield, you know, finding, his receivers and throwing guys open and finding ways to have massive amounts of explosives in a game, you know, from the pocket. And then what I think people are starting to learn about him is his ability to affect the game with his athleticism. I mean, the Sunday was a great example of that. Tampa did some good things to try to slow him down as the field condensed. There was some, coverages that there weren't a lot of, eligibles in rhythm. So what did he do? He found a way to get the ball in the end zone, to get a first down, to just, force you to snap it one more time by making a play athletically. And I thought he, was a driving force behind that game being so competitive into overtime, all those things. I think it was impressive. And just defensively, Raheem is a guy I know very well as the head coach. For sure, signing up to play a game like this against a group that he's coaching, they're going to play incredibly hard. They're going to be flying around the field. They're going to be a good tackling team. They're going to be all about the ball, punching at it, trying to force turnovers.
And J.J. McCarthy, we mentioned, winning the turnover battle, always important in any game. And certainly J.J. needs to avoid things like that pick six, but he obviously rebounded from that. And J.J., before he headed to the hospital to await the birth of his baby boy, he talked about this game against Atlanta, and he talked a little bit about Michael Penix too, but talking about the Atlanta defense he's going to face.
It's going to be a tough opponent for us. Atlanta's going to be ready to bounce back. I know Coach Morris and Coach Ulbrich are going to have, a great plan for us, and we just got to go out there and compete and, take advantage of this time, on a short week and really maximize it.
Any surprise on the NFC Player of the Week news?
A little surprised, but, at the end of the day, Monday Night Football, it's a tremendous win we got, but that's a team award. I don't look at that as an individual award at all. Defense kept us in it the whole game and found a way to bounce back offensively. So, yeah, it's great and all, but, it's on to the next one.
What do you know about Penix, and what do you remember about your college back and forth with it?
I love Michael. Just being able to be with him, during the pre-draft process and really understand his process and who he is as a man and his personality. It's no surprise where, he's in the position he's in right now. And, I'm extremely excited to see him again and compete against him. But, yeah, he's a great player, and it's going to be a good test for our defense.
Yeah, it should be an exciting game, definitely. And And even if some people would have liked to have seen Philly and Kansas City, that's okay. I think the Vikings and the Falcons will put on a good show too. And a couple other keys to the game. Special teams were really important in the Bear game. Ross, you think about the block punt, you think about Miles Price, his punt return ability. He's one of the top guys in the league right now through week one. And he'll probably pick up the kickoff return duty too, because Ty Chandler's on injured reserve this week now.
Did you think a month ago you would be thinking to yourself after 1 week heading into week two, where would the Minnesota Vikings be without Miles Price?
Yeah, not necessarily, but you never know where players come from. And I think he's a dynamic returner. He's definitely a step up from what they got out of Brandon Powell last year. And so, but the key is, again, ball security, which I'm sure they stress to him all the time. And that's going to be really important in this game as the Vikings try to win that turnover battle. And defensively, we know they want to stop the run, stop Robinson and Algier and Michael Penix from scrambling, and then get after the quarterback. Also have to cover well. It'd be important if Harrison Smith can make it back. I thought they were a little shaky in the secondary without him. Theo Jackson was very up and down. Jay Ward came in, did some good things at time, but then there was a busted coverage late in the game that the Bears should have scored on to DJ Moore. And so I think that the secondary is a concern when you're going to a game where there's so many dynamic receivers. Potentially, if London and Mooney can play, Kyle Pitts, one of the most talented tight ends in the league. And so that'll be a challenge, certainly for the secondary and the linebackers too. Jonathan Allen is a great addition to this team, and great guy. My agent firm represents him, so I'm a little biased, but he's been an all-pro, a Pro Bowl player, and he had a really good week one with 6 pressures, 3 tackles. And he talked today or yesterday about the depth that they have on the defensive line and about facing Atlanta.
Yeah, I think we have a lot of depth from a lot of young guys. I think that's awesome. I really think, Levi and Jalen, I really look at those guys as starters. I know they might not start, but I look at them as starter quality players in this league. So they're awesome. Excited to be here with them and, see what we can do this year.
How pumped are you to make your home debut?
Excited, super excited.
Yeah, you know what that atmosphere is like, but now that you're wearing purple, it means that much more.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I've been here one time in 2019, and I've always thought it was a very exciting and cool place to play. So I'm looking forward to being a part of it Sunday night.
I suppose tackling like Bijan, like the way he can, speaking of Caleb being elusive, that's Bijan, right? The tackling might probably go up a notch on Sunday.
Yeah, he definitely presents his challenges. I think as a group, we just have to go out there and have 11 guys to the ball. There's not going to be any one-on-one tackles out there. There's always going to be 11 tackling one. So as long as we go out there and we do that and we run to the ball, I think we'll be good.
And Michael Penix against J.J. McCarthy, even though they're not on the field at the same time, but that's going to be the big promo for this game. We know that. And it'll be exciting to see those two young quarterbacks in action. Here's Michael Penix Jr. at his weekly media session talking about facing Brian Flores' defense, and he better be ready.
He's just very versatile. And even whenever it's not the exotic stuff that he brings, I feel like they do a great job with their different coverages, being able to, switch things up, based on, certain formations and stuff or looks and motions and stuff that they do with their too high, their shell defense, and, how they can change all those things up. But, last year you saw they heated us up a lot last year, and but we just got to make sure we come out ready for anything that they can do, because he is a good coach, and he will be ready to call come game day, and we got to be ready to respond.
Let's hear again from our great sponsor, the Select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers.
GMC trucks weren't built overnight. Like every American achievement, they are a result of dedication, a dedication to mastering the art of design and the science of engineering, to building upon prior knowledge, year after year, decade after decade. GMC, over 100 years dedicated to the art of engineering and the ambition to always move this country forward. We are professional grade. Well-qualified buyers get 0% APR on 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 Crew Cab models with a 5.3-liter engine with an average finance savings of $43.22 plus $1,500 bonus cash. That's a total value over $5,800 plus no monthly payments until next year. See your local GMC dealer today. Length of contract limited. Deferred monthly payments for 120 days. Excludes residents of Pennsylvania. Must finance with GM Financial. Down payment required at signing if applicable. Finance charges accrue from data financing. Some customers will not qualify. Savings based on bank rate of 5.64%. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take new retail delivery by 9/30/25.
Okay, Ross, let's pick this game, the big Sunday night game, Vikings and the Falcons. And I'll go first. I don't think it's going to be a 21-point win like last year's game when the Vikings won here 42-21. Game was actually fairly close for 3 quarters before the Vikings blew them out in the fourth, and Cousins' 2 interceptions contributed to that. And will there be a Kirk Cousins sighting on Sunday night on the field? I don't think so, unless Penix has a terrible game or he gets hurt. And so I think it's going to be Penix. They don't want to destroy the young guy's confidence unless it's just an awful game or he gets hurt. But I think it's going to be a little closer. I think that the Falcons have a lot of talent on that team, but I think the Vikings can have a lot of explosive plays in the game. I think the defense can get after Penix and limit the running game. So I'm going to pick the Vikings. Another 1-score win, 30-24. How do you see it?
Okay, you kind of went right what I was thinking. By the way, if you see a Kirk Cousins sighting, it's probably just him on the sidelines in a ball cap when they're talking about him being the former quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings. Also, how many times over under, Jeff, we're told it's a national championship rematch between J.J. McCarthy and Michael Penix? I would guess probably 5 times.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
On the score, I'm with you. We all know, for better or worse, the Minnesota Vikings just don't win games easily. They so seldomly win games the last 5 years by 2 scores or more. I'm going to take the Vikings here as well, 27-17, 27-20 or 24-17. I think they'll win by a touchdown. But I like the Vikings at home. I like that JJ faced some adversity, and he'll get to be slightly more comfortable at home in front of the home audience. I just think this sets up well for the Minnesota Vikings to get to 2-0.
I agree with you. As long as JJ gets some sleep, if that baby comes, got to get some sleep. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a fun game. Great atmosphere on Sunday night, and a couple other games we can talk about. We mentioned before the Chiefs and the Eagles in that Super Bowl rematch. As I said, it's hard to see the Mahomes and Andy Reid going 0-2, but I just think missing Xavier Worthy really hurts their passing game. And I just think the Eagles are a better team. They didn't play great against Dallas, but I think they'll be cranked up for this game, even though it's in Kansas City. So I'm gonna pick the Eagles in this game, and I like the Lions to beat the Bears. I don't think the Lions are going to drop to 0-2. I think Chicago will, and take care of their former offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson. And those are a couple key games I see. And then I think another interesting game this week, the Bengals, who are the Vikings' week 3 opponent here, faced Jacksonville. They both won their openers. Cincinnati really held down on offense. Joe Burrow only 113 yards passing. I think that changes against Jacksonville this week. And I like, so I'm going to take Philadelphia. I'm going to take Detroit, and I'm going to take Cincinnati. And I think that'll set up a battle of 2-0 teams next week.
On Kansas City very quickly, Jeff, the Kansas City thing to me is going to be interesting because until they have their comeback to reality season where maybe that's a 9-8, 10-7 season, I'm just always going to continue to operate like I did with the New England Patriots and Tom Brady, that they're going to make it to the Super Bowl until they don't. I still believe that about Kansas City. So if I believe that about Kansas City, I'm with you. I feel like the Eagles should win, but I can't buy Kansas City at 0-2. Your Bengals thing, I want the Bengals to win. I always want the opponent that the Vikings play next to come in on a win versus a loss, unless I view them as a really bad team. So I'm all for Cincinnati coming in at 2-0 and maybe having their guard down just a little bit when they take on the purple.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with you. And I think that it'll be a fun game next week. But first, the Sunday night game, Vikings and the Falcons. And we will be back on Monday for our regular show, Mondays and Thursdays next week. And look forward to breaking down the Vikings and Falcons on Monday. And this has been Jeff Diamond's Purple Report, brought to you every Monday and Thursday during the Vikings season by your select Minnesota Buick GMC dealers and the 2025 GMC Sierra 1500 on 1500 ESPN, available 24/7 on YouTube via link from the Score North website. This is Jeff Diamond with Ross Brendel, and we will talk to you on Monday.